Sue, if you're talking, I can't hear you for some reason.
Okay, Pete, I was saying if it's all okay with you, I'll conduct the meeting from here.
That would be super. Thank you.
I thought you were having selective hearing there.
Oh, it happens all the time. Ask Devin.
Right. Doesn't it?
Especially if the trash needs to go out or the sidewalk needs to be shoveled. It's unbelievable what I can't hear.
Exactly. Just like Finn, my Bashan, come, and he goes the opposite way. Stay, and he's gone.
I always can hear the dinner bell, however. It's a remarkable thing.
I don't expect
Yeah. Yeah. Carly. Yeah, go ahead and let her in. So should I go ahead and have them draw?
I like to help people with spacing.
Everyone have to draw here. This will be the order
I got stuff. No.
Hey, Christina.
Well, oh, good job.
No, the interview is open to the public, just deliberation and executive session. No. Yep, I think so. Okay, it's on Zoom also, if that's easier. Yeah. Okay. Okay, whichever one makes you happy. Yes.
Hey, Sue, do you want us to ask all three of our questions or do you want to go?
round robin, Pete. I think that would be best.
Okay.
Zoom's okay.
Zoom's okay. Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Bye-bye. I texted Heber. He said he's close.
Okay. I think I'll make this announcement and then we'll allow the three to leave so I don't have to repeat it for each one. Is that okay? Okay. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
How are
Hey,
you?
Heber.
Pretty good.
Okay. Peter, you ready to go?
I am, Sue. Thank you.
Okay. David? Jackie? Ladies?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep.
Gentlemen? Okay. Welcome, everyone, this afternoon to our special meeting. County Commissioners will be selecting a new Albany County and prosecuting attorney. I'm going to call to order the meeting at 2:01. Roll call. Heber?
Here.
Pete?
Here.
And Sue here. If we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I see that we have a few participants through Zoom this afternoon. First of all, do we have any comments from the public? Again, any comments from the public? Okay, seeing none, do I need to close that at all? Peter, could I have a motion to close the public comment period?
I move we close the public comment period.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we close the public comment period. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Any disclosures?
I have none.
I'm just in California, so I'm still checking in. So
Okay, and I have none. Okay, any consideration of changes to the agenda?
none for me, Madam Chair.
None here as well. Okay, so we will proceed with our interviews for the candidates for Albany County and prosecuting attorney. The candidates have each pulled a number from a container, and so we do know the order that they will be going. I want to, on behalf of the county commissioners, thank you for applying for the open position for Albany County and prosecuting attorney. We realize this isn't an easy office to take on, especially since this post is up for election in 1.5 years. We are appreciative of you taking the time from your Sunday afternoon to meet with us here. Let me explain the process. Each of the commissioners have submitted 3 questions we would like to have you answer for a total of 9 to each one of you. We will go in a round robin method. After the questions have been answered, you will be allowed a few minutes, about 10 minutes, for closing remarks and to ask any questions of us. Any questions? Okay, are we ready to begin? All right. First candidate, and if I can ask the other 2 to excuse yourself. There are places out in the hall that you will be able to sit, and we will be shutting the doors.
Okay.
Okay, since on my list that Jennifer sent out, Heber's questions appear first. I'm going to ask Heber to go with the first one, then Pete will go to you, and we'll go to me, and we'll continue in that fashion, please.
Would it be okay if I remove my mask for the questions?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Hey, how are you?
Good to see you again.
It's good to see you. What's interesting about my questions is that by logic, they probably ought to go later. Just because of the type of questions they are. But
And Heber, just so you know, we'll each ask one and then continue. We're
Oh,
not
I
going to ask
gotcha.
all 3, okay?
County attorney works closely with outside boards, elected officials, department heads, and the staff in that office. If you were to be appointed to the position, how would you develop, grow, and repair these working relationships?
You know, I actually had several conversations with county attorneys who I know, who I've either worked with or knew from around the state, and people who came maybe that I'm working with now that came from other county attorney offices around the state. It's so different. The district attorney's office is so different from what a county attorney's office is, right? And so I talked to a lot of them about what goes on in a county attorney's office. And one of the first things that they said is that on day one, it should be a priority to get out and meet all the agency heads, get out and spend a few minutes with each of the commissioners, and spend some time with those boards, and make sure that you're on the agenda, introducing yourself and figuring out what needs to be done to do everything that you just asked in your question: repair relationships, maintain relationships, maybe begin a relationship. I don't know certainly what types of relationships were forged or forgotten during the last several years. And so, especially when you get into a situation where you're in somebody's second term, that's a lot of time that's gone by. And so that would be at the top of my priority list is, getting upstairs to sit down with Jackie and getting some time to meet with the three of you and figuring out who all of these boards are, when their meetings are, when their next meeting is, and getting at least a presence, if not on the agenda, to introduce myself and start to do whatever piece of those three needs to be done, even if it's just starting the relationship over again and getting going and getting involved. So.
Next question will be coming from Pete.
Hey, Bain, good afternoon. Good to see you.
Hi, Pete. Good to see you too.
Hey, so please explain how you would ensure that your office will encourage and support diverse voices and opinions. And then can you give me an example from your past experience where you've done that or you've seen that done well?
Sure. So I don't think that I certainly know that I'm not ever the smartest person in the room. And I certainly know that I'm not ever, the background I come from, the background I have, the education I have is not the only one that's present. And so maintaining an open group of friends and work partners and colleagues matters. Opinions matter. I think honestly, the biggest thing that I've done recently to see another viewpoint and to understand another viewpoint is my involvement with the treatment courts in Laramie County. When I first started over in Laramie County, I was assigned to the DUI court over there. We have 3 treatment courts in Laramie County: DUI court, drug court, and veterans court. And certainly by sitting down with just the participants in those treatment courts, it's a whole another world that you're coming from. Whether it was the guy who in his lifetime has had 8 or 9 or 10 DUIs, and it finally started to ring true for him because his kids wouldn't allow his grandkids to be around him or ride in the car with him because they're too scared. Or if you're talking to the methamphetamine addict that has lived on the streets and slept in a parking garage in Cheyenne and was kicked out of the Comia shelter in Cheyenne because of the drug addiction, lived under a bridge for a while, you certainly get a completely different viewpoint and a diverse viewpoint. And I think that's important. I think it matters. I think that none of us should ever find ourselves living in a situation where we don't have respect for and knowledge of what other people are going through. Certainly in Laramie, I know just from being here for since the mid 90s, the large gaps in socioeconomic areas and the large amount of poverty that we have in Albany County. And, I think it matters. You have to include those people in your life, and you have to include those people in discussions, because it's not enough to know that I can put food on my table and my friends can put food on their table. I have to have an understanding of the fact that whatever the trial may be, whether it's an alcohol addiction, a methamphetamine addiction, or living not even from paycheck to paycheck because food's not available. And so, I hope that answers your question. I think it matters. Diverse opinions matter. If we find ourselves going down a tunnel where the only things that we're hearing are the same opinions that we have, I think we're in trouble.
Thanks, Bain. Appreciate it.
Okay, the next question's going to come from me. For how long did you or have you prosecuted felony cases, and how many of those cases went to jury trial?
So I've been in the prosecutor's office in Laramie County since the fall of 2019. When I first started, I handled only misdemeanor crimes, and I've handled across the board everything that has come through that office. Domestic batteries, DUIs, drug crimes, whatever it might be. In January, and really starting last December, I started to be assigned. Actually, it probably goes back earlier than that. I think my first felony case that was assigned was in, I want to say, February of 2020. So I was still a circuit court attorney, but as conflicts would come up for various attorneys at the felony level, we had 5 attorneys at the felony level, and then we had all of the 4 of us at the circuit court level doing misdemeanors. When stuff would come up and there were conflicts, very often a circuit court attorney would be assigned. So I've had felony cases since early in 2020, probably just 3 or 4 months after I started over there. As far as trials with COVID, that's put a massive block in anybody's opportunity to go to trial. I did participate in a trial with the elected district attorney, Leanne Manlove. I want to say that was I don't think it was in 2019, but it very well could have been either late 2019 or early 2020, just before COVID hit, and we had the shutdown of the courts. And just so you're aware, in Laramie County, the district courts didn't reopen until March, I believe, March 1st. And we have not had a jury trial yet. Most of those cases have settled. The jury trial plan in Laramie County only allows for 1 courtroom to be used of the district courtrooms. And so because of that, we can't do trials that are over 5 days. I think those are the trials now that are on the docket that will go once we can have trials that can last longer than 5 days. But we've called a few juries. We've even gone as far as through jury selection with 1 trial over there. That was not my trial. So I participated in 1 felony trial. I participated in 1. I did a DUI trial literally, I think, a week or a week and a half prior to COVID and the shutdown of the courts. And since then, it's been all plea bargains and negotiations and just regular court, because we haven't had any trials really since then in Laramie County. So prior to becoming a prosecutor, however, I was in court in my private practice. I've been a part of 3, 4, 5 civil trials as well. Most stuff doesn't end up in trial. And so as much as all of us go into this profession, because we want to go to trial, a lot of stuff settles outside of court. So COVID put a big hamper on getting trial time, though.
Thank you,
Thanks, Sue.
Commissioner.
What is your philosophy for managing office staff, interns, and other attorneys?
Oh, boy. Sue, I just remembered. Heber, I'll answer your question in a second. I did a trial that I was assigned a special prosecutor on as well. That was over here in Albany County. So I did do that trial as well. That was another misdemeanor trial, though. So it was not a felony trial. My management style, I've been micromanaged and I can't stand it. It's probably part of the reason that I was successful in private practice once I had my own firm, because the only person managing me was me. And so I don't like to micromanage. I trust that if I'm overseeing a group of attorneys, and I do this right now, I have taken on, along with one of the other felony attorneys in our office, working with the circuit court attorneys, the misdemeanor attorneys in our office. They're all newer, have less experience. And so I worked with one of them when I was doing in the circuit court, and now I kind of supervise. We workshop cases and talk about potential plea agreements. But I prefer to listen first and inject any amount of control or management that has to be done after I've heard what has to be said. I think that certainly when you're in a position like a county attorney or a district attorney and it's elected position, everything in that office for you rides on being able to get reelected. And so I think that that probably takes some people's approach to managing attorneys and puts them in a position where they try to exert more control over it, because you don't want plea agreements made that might interfere with what ultimately got you elected. And you don't want that stuff done that casts you maybe in a bad light because you're the elected person in the office. I don't know that would become an issue for me. Like I said to Pete, I don't think I'm ever the smartest person in the room. And everybody has something to give and contribute. In Laramie County, we have attorneys meetings, we workshop. In fact, when big cases are coming up and maybe even big plea offers are coming up, since we haven't had trials for so long, very often what we'll do is just send out an email and say, hey, I need help with this. Here's what's coming up. How about if everybody just brown bag lunches it on Wednesday at noon? And let's just sit around and kick around some ideas. That's the way I think to work with professionals. Everybody's got the same license I have. Everybody's got their own approaches. Everybody even reads the law in little different ways that give you maybe the right opinion on something. Maybe my opinion on a certain case coming out of the Wyoming Supreme Court is off by just a little bit, but you know, 2 or 3 other attorneys can say, no, you're off. I understand why you're saying that and you're right to this point, but once we get to that point, it changes and this is where we need to go with it. So I'm not a micromanager. I'm not controlling. But when a decision has to be made, I don't have a problem making a decision either. And if it comes down to, you know, an attorney coming into my office and saying, here's what I'm thinking. What do you think? I'm going to want to ask some questions, listen, maybe look at the evidence, and then, you know, help them to make a decision, push them to make a decision, or ultimately, if they can't, make a decision and get the office moving forward and keep us able to do our jobs.
So Bain, suppose you give legal advice to the county commission that a commissioner challenges. What would your process be to make sure that the advice was as accurate as possible?
I suspect that this probably happens from time to time, but you know, all that I can do is give you the advice that I have from the research I've done. And if the commissioners or an agency head or even a board who's asked for some sort of advice on something, if they don't agree, I still have to, in order to keep my license, I have to be competent. I have to be knowledgeable. I have to go and do some research. And if there's a disagreement on the commissioners and they don't like a piece of advice or my understanding of law on some level, then, you know, I definitely will take their opinion into consideration, go back and see if I can find where that's coming from. Where is that piece of opinion for that commissioner or the entire group of commissioners coming from? And if I find that I still would make the same recommendation, that I still would make the same findings or read the law the same way, I would probably come back to the commission and give the exact same advice I had given, even taking into consideration that you all have to make a tough decision then, and you all have my opinion, and I based it in the law as I see it. You know, maybe I have to talk to some of the other attorneys. Maybe I have to talk to some attorneys outside of the office to see. You know, we have attorneys in the state who are active, who have decisions in front of the Supreme Court. We have the Attorney General's office to bounce ideas off of and figure out where they're at on what some of these opinions have meant. And so, you know, without violating confidentiality or any of my rules of ethics, I think I would go back, take a look at it. And if I came back to you all with the same recommendation, at least you would know where I stood and what I believe the law was. And I think then it's up to the 3 of you or whoever the agency head is to make a decision at that point.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
Because your experience is primarily in criminal law or non-governmental civil matters, please describe how you intend to gain the knowledge necessary to oversee the majority of the county attorney's workload, such as drafting complex contracts, intergovernmental agreements, and resolutions.
Sure. So again, I'm not the smartest person in the room. And I think as long as you approach your job in that way, you can do the job. You can do any job. I don't know very many attorneys that have active working knowledge in everything that this job would entail, which means they have to, number one, surround themselves with people who can help them to get the jobs done. And number two, be willing to go and listen and learn on the fly. And that's not so different for any attorney. That's the practice of law. Supreme Court precedent changes all the time, whether it's Wyoming or United States Supreme Court precedent. We are constantly, in my current office, the district attorney sends us emails every time a new decision comes down from the Supreme Court and says, you need to read this, here's why. Here's what it changes for us. So even in the criminal side, it's constantly evolving and changing. And so on the civil side of it, if I don't have a full enough knowledge to competently review a contract, it's my responsibility under the rules of ethics to gain that competence and gain that knowledge. And I can do that in various ways. I can research it. I can look at other opinions that have come down wherever they've come down from. And I can work with the people in my office who may be more centered and more knowledgeable in those certain areas. You know, it's not just the civil law. There's going to be criminal things that come up as well for the county attorney that elected person may not have the most experience with, and turning to those other attorneys in the office and working towards resolution in those criminal matters too. So I do have a decent amount of civil experience. It's just not in a lot of the things that the county attorney is going to do. But I do have experience working with the mental health issues in my criminal side and in some of my civil side. And so I have been able to work with things that are very close to the Title 25 proceedings that the county attorney has to deal with. I was assigned to handle juvenile cases by Judge Cricken while I was still in private practice. So I've got experience with some of the juvenile matters that will come before the court. I've worked in the treatment courts in Laramie County, so I've got experience with the treatment courts. I have trial experience on something other than drugs, which is my current position. All that I deal with right now since January 15th is felony drug cases in Laramie County. We have enough attorneys in that office that I can be that specific in what my job responsibilities are. But my trial experience was in something that didn't deal with drugs at all. And so, whether it's civil or criminal, I think we are required under the rules of professional conduct to be competent and knowledgeable. And if you don't have that knowledge to be competent, you go and you search it out. And we're constantly learning. We're constantly engaging in conversations and in the study of law so that we can then practice the law. So I don't think it's too much of a leap to say that, most attorneys could not claim to have experience across the board in all the things that a county attorney is going to have to do. So you surround yourself with the best people. You respect their opinions and you value those opinions, and you make yourself knowledgeable so that you can be competent and so that you can, based in the law of the state of Wyoming and based in the precedent of the courts that are higher than where we're dealing, represent the law to your clients at 100% competency. And if you can't get there, then you have to find a way to get there. If you can't get there on your own, you have to find a way to get there. And I think you do that by just keeping an open mind and surrounding yourself with good people.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sue.
This is a fun question. This is Hebrew question. It tells you how my mind works. The county attorney's job is high stakes in about every case. Knowing what not to do is as important as knowing what to do. How will your professional experience help you avoid costly or unintended mistakes?
Wow, that is a Hebrew question. I shouldn't say that. I don't know you well enough to say it's a Hebrew question, but
Well, now
since
you
you
know
said
me
it's a
better.
Hebrew question, that's right. That's right. I think that I don't know a lawyer who's licensed that I work with who doesn't spend every single waking second as an attorney worried about losing their livelihood. And those mistakes you're talking about are the ones where you lose your livelihood. You miscalculate a conflict when you're in private practice, you have your own law firm, and you're funding through that law firm your family's well-being. And all of a sudden, that student loan that you have for law school can't get paid because you lost your license. That's terrifying. So, but the state of Wyoming, we have a large bar, but we also have a pretty small bar when you're comparing it to other states. And I know that Mark Gifford who's bar counsel for the state of Wyoming, who gets those ethical complaints, I know his cell phone, it's in my cell phone. I know his office number, that's in my cell phone. I know his assistant, and if I have to call and ask for help before I make a move or before I make the wrong decision, I call and ask for help. And in private practice, I did it all the time. I was also fortunate early on in private practice that I didn't have to go to Mark Gifford, because in my office was John Berman, who was the legal ethics expert of all time for the state of Wyoming and maybe for the United States. And I was fortunate to be able to pick up the phone and call John and talk to his wife and get him on the phone. And even as his health was failing, the mind wasn't, and he wanted that interaction. And those conversations were some of the best that I had. But it can go wrong. It can go horribly wrong. And it can turn into an absolute dumpster fire very quickly if you aren't careful. And we get the emails. If you're a member of the Wyoming Bar, you get the emails from the state bar office that says, attorney censured, attorney privately censured. I never want my name to be in one of those. Attorney disbarred. I never want that. And so I don't try to assume that I know everything. I can look at the rules of ethics all I want. And at the end of the day, if I'm still concerned that a direction that I'm thinking about taking could cause me problems, I'm going to pick up the phone, I'm going to call bar counsel, and I'm going to say, okay, Mr. Gifford, you've got complete control over my license if I really screw this up. What am I doing wrong here? Or what am I doing right? And what do I need to make sure I'm avoiding? Can you point me where in the rules I can find these 3 places? Can you point me anywhere else or to a decision that guides me so that I don't lose my license? It's very serious business. And I think you're right. It's maybe a little bit more serious for a county attorney. Maybe more serious for a county attorney than just about any other attorney, because you're dealing with so many constituents. And these openings like this that brings us here today, that's not easy on the county attorney's office. They haven't had a leader for the last, what are we at now, 19, 18 days? That's not easy. When none of them were elected, they were hired to do a job, but they weren't elected. And now they haven't had somebody in that office for that amount of time. And so I think you have to be cognizant of not losing your license. You have to be cognizant of being able to maintain an income so that your family doesn't suffer because you've made a decision. You have to be cognizant of the county suffering because of decisions you may be making. And you have to be cognizant of those other attorneys in that office and how they could have to suffer because of decisions you're making. And it's not easy. You know, I made the comment the other day that Albany County's been through it, man, through it, the ringer. You know, it hasn't been easy here. And I have friends on both sides of this and the stuff that's gone on. And, you know, you guys all saw me, Sue didn't, but you and Pete saw me. It hasn't been that many months. We were here in December. And I was here because I believed in the county and in the county being able to start healing then. And I think that you know, Sheriff Applehans was selected. He was the right person for the job at the right time. He's doing great work. And this is another step for this county to start healing. And thank God it didn't take some contentious campaign and election to get us to that point. This isn't easy either, but it's time for Albany County to be able to kind of take a deep breath and start healing and moving forward. And you know, I care about it. I've been here for a long time, and I care about how Albany County does too. I may be working in Cheyenne, but I commute every day. My house is still out in West Laramie, and it has been since before I was even licensed as an attorney. And so, you know, I'm a citizen here too, and we have to make competent, knowledgeable decisions that aren't going to hurt the county and aren't going to hurt our office, because boy, I think the county and the community have had enough of that. So, thanks, Heber.
Thank you.
Thane, what is something new that you've learned in the past year, and how have you applied that learning to your work as an attorney?
Oh boy. Pete Heber thought he had a tough question for me. I just took over the felony drug job in Albany or in Laramie County on January 15th. And just in order to make sure you understand the high stakes in that job, it's the HIDTA position, HIDTA. That is high intensity drug trafficking area. It's federally funded by a grant. There are only 3 HIDTA attorneys in the state of Wyoming: Casper, Rock Springs, and Cheyenne. And through that process, not only did I move from misdemeanor amounts of methamphetamine and 45-day suspended sentences for a year, maybe a year of probation and some lower level treatment, but I moved to hundreds of pounds of marijuana. I just had a case a couple weeks ago that came in that had 50 pounds of methamphetamine. And that doesn't sound like a lot when you're dealing with 600 pounds of marijuana, but 50 pounds of methamphetamine is a boatload of methamphetamine. When you think about that, a misdemeanor amount is 3 grams, and we're dealing with 50 pounds. But I say all of that to say to you that what I've learned, and it's very recent, is about the illegal fentanyl that's now pouring into the state of Wyoming, and the changes in the cartels since marijuana has become legalized across the country. And the cartels have shifted to almost an exclusive poppy production instead of growing marijuana. So now they're not exporting out of Mexico marijuana. Now they're exporting heroin. And they are also now, there's massive labs actually down in Denver producing methamphetamine, but they're also producing a fake oxycodone pill that is made out of fentanyl. And the people that are getting their hands on this drug on the streets of Cheyenne, and I suspect it's here as well, but the people that are getting their hands on this drug on the streets of Cheyenne are not knowing how pure the pill is. They're not knowing what it's cut with, and they're overdosing at a rate that is so much higher than what the Cheyenne law enforcement agencies have ever seen. They have people, they basically said that when they get a call, their budget for Narcan is through the roof because they're trying to save these drug addicts' lives. And I think what that all boils down to, when you combine it with my involvement with the treatment court, is we have victims of addiction in I'm sure in Albany County, I know in Laramie County, who, because of their circumstances, they aren't employable, they've got too many convictions, and they can't stay off of the drug long enough to hold down the job. So they live in poverty. They're homeless, and most of our methamphetamine and a lot of our heroin addicts are also suffering from some sort of mental health crisis at the time that they become addicted to either methamphetamine or heroin. They are using a very serious drug to self-medicate and get rid of the voices in their head, or feel like they have enough energy because they're so horribly depressed that they can get out of bed. But let's not forget about the fact that they have to be absolutely stoned on methamphetamine to have that energy. And so the mental health and the poverty tie-ins to the issues that we face in my office over in Cheyenne with drugs and property crimes, there are ways to start addressing mental health in our communities so that it never gets to that point. So that the Cheyenne Police Department isn't increasing their budget for Narcan in order to save addicts' lives because they're overdosing on fentanyl coming out of Denver that's in pill form that looks like oxycodone. And we can't simply fight this by sending that addict who overdosed to drug court, and when they bomb out of there, sending them to the state pen. That is not where the fight has to start. The fight has to start with our mental health services in the state of Wyoming, and our help for people who need a job, don't have a home, they're living under a bridge. Poverty and mental health have to start being addressed in the state of Wyoming. It's not enough any longer to turn a cold shoulder to those problems in our state. And I think that I probably knew or should have known, Pete, the tie-ins, but man, it's become clear to me in the last 4 months, and was starting to become clear to me in the last few months of dealing with DUIs and misdemeanor drugs, that we've got to start focusing on mental health care for people who need it in Wyoming. The weakest and most discouraged victims and addicts, they need our help too. It can no longer just be bailing out coal mines that are going bankrupt in Northeast Wyoming. It can no longer just be, we should be doing things like putting Medicare for all on the table, because that gets you some mental health care. That gets you some treatment services. That gets you the ability to start helping to pull people out of poverty, that then keeps them from getting addicted to these drugs, that keeps them from ending up with this bad fentanyl out of Denver, and that keeps them from needing to be revived with Narcan on the street of our capital city. I hope that answers your question, Pete.
Thanks, Bane.
Okay, I have the last question. What would you do if you were asked to work on a case or business scenario that gave you ethical qualms? Has this ever happened to you? And if so, what did you do?
I addressed this a little bit with Heber's question, but I cannot put my personal and family's livelihood and well-being at stake for any decision I may have to make. And so, we had a public forum with the Democrats about a week ago now. I think it was last Monday. And the same question came up. And what the answer is that we all know is, I said this at the time, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's a duck. So if you have any question at all that it's a conflict or a violation of your ethical requirements or whatever it might be, you don't do it. You can't do it. Because I'm not going to have to force my family to move out of the home that we're in and go find another job that pays far less so that I can continue to pay on my student loans because there was a conflict and I wasn't intelligent enough to say, I know it's there and I'm walking away. And we're going to go find somebody who doesn't have that conflict to take care of this. Like I told you, one of the trials that I've done since I've been over in Cheyenne was that special prosecutor case. And that's because the people in Albany County were conflicted out. And so they reached out to other prosecutors around the state, and that case fell on our office, and we prosecuted it. And that's what you should do. If there's an ethical consideration or a conflict, if it even starts to smell like it. I heard somebody say the other day, even if it's the last thought in the back of your head before you go to bed at night, that there could be a conflict or there could be an ethical issue with that question or that case or whatever it may be that's put in front of you, then it's a conflict. If you have to think about it being a conflict, it's a conflict. And there's plenty that goes on in our daily work, whether it's in Laramie County or Albany County, that we never even think about ethical considerations, conflict considerations. We function and do our jobs. And so if there's even a hint of a conflict, a hint of an ethical problem with something that's come in front of you, you have to find somebody else that can handle that for you.
And has this happened to you?
It has happened to me. I was assigned to the case here. I've never had a conflict since I've been a criminal prosecutor. I've taken over cases that are conflicts for other people. But when I was in civil law, I was primarily a family law attorney. I also had some juvenile cases. I did a very minimal amount of trust and estate stuff. I basically wouldn't even count it as something that I spent hardly any time on. Some contractor law, some landlord-tenant issues. Family law is ripe with ethical and conflict considerations, especially when you're practicing family law in a place like Laramie, because you know a lot of the people. And it's very often that you'll know in a divorce, for example, the husband and the wife. And when I have a son who's a junior in high school, you might know the kids involved as well. And you can't, if you have anything that would conflict you out under the rules of ethical responsibility, you have to walk away. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if that case would pay. And when you're in private practice, cases that pay are few and far between, and it doesn't matter. And a lot of times what I would do in those situations is I would tell that person that I had a conflict, that I couldn't take the case. Please don't tell me any more about it. I really don't want to know. I know your husband, and I really don't want to know any more about it. I'm going to see your kids at the basketball game this weekend, and I just don't want to know any more about it. But I'll also make a few phone calls, get you a few names of some other attorneys who may be able to help you. And that's far simpler in a family law situation than it is when you're dealing with some of the ethical and conflictions that will come into being in a county attorney's office. But you have to walk away. And I have dealt with them, and I think that you're making a really bad decision if you don't walk away.
Thank you. You now have a few minutes to address us in the closing remarks or any questions.
I don't think I have any questions at this point in time. All I would say to you guys is this. You all, with the exception of Sue, know me from just a few months ago. I knew when I applied for the Albany County Sheriff's position, I didn't have any law enforcement experience, but I also knew from what I was hearing from people around the community that there was a possibility that the issues at the Sheriff's Department were far more personnel oriented than they were law enforcement oriented. And so I made a decision after speaking with my wife and some of my colleagues that my experience, I had human resources experience. I've managed people in offices before. I've managed teams before. That experience was something that may lend itself to helping the Albany County Sheriff's Office. As a member of the community, I felt like if I felt I had skills that would help, that I should throw myself out there. And that was a pretty crappy process, to be completely honest with you. Heber, you know about the lawsuits and all of it, right? It wasn't enjoyable just being a candidate on the stage for that position with all of the noise that was going on in the background. But we went through it, and I think that's why we did it then, and that's why I'm doing it now, is because I feel like I've got a skill set that lends itself to this job at this time. I've managed people, I've done human resources, I've got civil experience. It may not be directly tied to the types of stuff that's going to happen, but it's very closely tied. And I've got criminal experience now after my last coming up on 2 years now in Laramie County, in the busiest prosecutor's office in the state. And I think that's pretty good experience as well. Plus, we've all navigated COVID now. So, you know, throw that little hurdle on top of just going to practicing law. And I don't take it lightly. It was another conversation that I had to have with my wife and my family, because they also saw what we as candidates had to go through in the sheriff's race. And some of the things that were said to us and the contacts we had from people behind, you know, the wall where we didn't expect to be attacked, people that would find us in places like Facebook and send us messages, people who weren't our friends, who decided that that was the time to attack and go after us. And so I had those conversations again. I'm far more qualified for this position than I was for sheriff. You know, it's funny because when we were talking about the sheriff position, I had said multiple times, I don't even know that I want to carry a gun. Do I have to carry a gun? If I'm chosen for this, do I have to be armed at all times? You know, that's an uncomfortable situation for me. And so, but we did it then. I'm doing it now. I feel like I'm the, you know, maybe not the most qualified, but I know I'm qualified for this position. I know that I care about Albany County. And just since the candidate forum last Monday, I've already started getting reached out to by people who are cautious in saying, be careful about what you've heard. Be careful about what you may think. There's other stuff that's gone on. There's some programs that are in trouble. They're going to need your help. And we hope that you get the position. And I hope I get the position too, because I want to give back to the community and the county that's been my home since the mid-90s. It's why I chose to put my name out there again. It's why I never left Laramie when I started working in Cheyenne, and we could have. Man, I tell you what, you drive I-80 about 3 times in the winter on a bad day, and you're going to second guess continuing to live in Laramie. And, you know, we certainly could have made that move as a family, but we chose to stay here. I've been in Laramie since the mid-90s. I don't have any plans at this point to not be here tomorrow. I've stayed here even though I was working in Cheyenne, and I care about the people, and I care about the processes, and I care about the law. And I'm willing to put myself out there. And I think you should choose me to be the next county attorney for Albany County. I won't let you down. I appreciate you having me today, though. You know, Heber and Pete, good to be in front of you again. Maybe one of these days I won't be in front of you or with you in these types of circumstances. And Sue, it was very nice to meet you this morning.
You as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the time today.
Thanks.
Jackie, we'll
Thanks.
be hearing from Christina. Can you, how will the candidates be?
Candidates will want to remain.
Okay.
We certainly might be happy to call the candidates. They're not
Okay.
present.
After all candidates have been interviewed, we will be going into executive session to discuss and make a decision at that point. You're free to stick around or you're free to go. It could be a while.
Right.
And so we can definitely get a phone call to you.
I'm planning on still being here, so
Okay. All right.
Jackie's got my number though.
Okay. Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
I don't know who number 2 is. I didn't ever ask them.
Stuck back. Stuck to something I was taking out. Thanks.
Okay. Mr. Rixius, as I explained before, we will each ask you a question for a total of 9 going round robin. You'll have about 45 minutes to answer the questions. We're not timing, but just so you have an idea. And then we'll
Okay.
allow you about 10 minutes for closing remarks or any questions that you might have for us.
Very good.
Okay, so I'll let Commissioner Richardson begin first.
County attorney works with outside boards, elected officials, department heads, and the staff in that office. If you were to be appointed as county attorney, how would you develop, grow, and repair these working relationships? Oh, and hello, how's it going?
Going well. Thank you very much.
See you.
It's good to see you again as well. I think just being willing to talk and communicate with them and having an open door, showing up at the boards, working with the folks, addressing their concerns, figuring out what's going on. I mean, when I was here, I was a criminal prosecutor, so I don't know all the intricacies of what was going on. But I think your first goal in that regard is to get in there with the boards and the other governmental departments and see what their concerns are, see what's not being addressed and what's, they whatever happened in the past, and trying to move beyond that, get their concerns addressed and just be there for them if they want to call, they want to have an email, they want to sit down and talk and have coffee, just making yourself available. With the staff that's in the office, I mean, I've never stopped having relationships with those people. I've always practiced in Albany County, and I would always stop by. I mean, I know everybody on a first name basis, and from what I understand, they've done a stellar job. They're carrying the burden right now on their own, and they seem to be working quite well. When I get in there, if I do talk to them, see what their concerns are, see if there's anything that can be changed, and hopefully, no, we don't have a mass flight. We have not, which is really good. And everybody's willing to hang around and work together and get through things.
Good afternoon, Kurt. Thank you for being here. Could you please explain how you would ensure that your office will encourage and support diverse voices and opinions? And can you give an example from your past experience?
Diversity, just in a general sense, sir, or?
Sure, however you'd like to answer that, either whether it is people that have a different perspective on the law or that might be different genders, sexual orientations, any of that.
Well, and I think both are important when it comes to hiring. Just give everybody a fair shake, treat everybody equally, make sure the decisions aren't being made with any sort of bias or preference. I mean, bias against someone or preference for someone. Making sure that people are getting the positions they have and are advancing or not on their own work and on their own merit. As far as diversity of opinions go, we have different teams. I think some in the last discussion that we're talking to, the SART team, the sexual assault response team, is one that deals with sexual assaults, which brings a large group of people together, and including people from the advocate community, law enforcement, various stakeholders, and you get a lot of different perspectives. I mean, prosecutors look at things in one way, and I understand that, and I think these sorts of committees, I guess, single point being another one, where you get different ideas and get different people in the room, and you listen to what they have to say. It can make you change your mind on things. One way I used to do it was when I had a view on a case, I would go ask my staff. I'd give them factual scenarios and see how non-attorneys would respond. Something I may have thought was very important, because legally to me it was important, really didn't matter to them. To them it was a different perspective. And I think getting those different perspectives can only help the situation, help you make better decisions in the criminal world and in the civil world as well.
Thanks, Kurt.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Kurt, the next question comes from me. I'd like to know, for how long did you or have you prosecuted felony cases, and how many of those cases went to jury trial?
So I started with the Albany County Attorney's Office in May of 2009 and left in February of 2020. That was my first and only prosecution job. Prior to that, I was working at a local firm. And so, I think the first jury trial I had, I was second chairing with the then county attorney was a felony. Don't quote me on that. It's been a long time ago, but I believe that was the case. And then the way it works under that individual was basically myself and another attorney handled the criminal cases that came through. We split them up by date or made sure that we were about equal on when the case actually came in. And we were doing everything from speeding bench trials to felony jury trials, pretty much from the start. So since spring, summer of 2009, I've been prosecuting felony cases. How many have gone to trial? That's a hard one for me to give you a good answer on. It's just been so long. 30, 40, maybe. And I could be off. I don't mean to misguide you, but I just don't remember off the top of my head. But quite a few, quite a few.
Thank you. Commissioner Richardson.
What's your philosophy for managing office staff, interns, and other attorneys?
You know, I think I come with more of a hands-on being personable with them. I'm there with them and talking to them every day, really getting to know them. I mean, the good thing about this office in Albany County is it's small enough. You can actually personally know every attorney and every member of your staff with, quite frankly, not much effort, and you absolutely should. You should know what kind of people they are and know them personally, know when their birthdays are, know when things are going on. The people there now are I consider them all my friends. I mean, I've worked with them for years, for the most part. That personal kind of relationship allows you to really know the individual you're dealing with, how best to approach them if something does come up. If there's a conflict in the office, how to best manage those personalities, because those are all unique. It's all human. So you are trying to address really human problems and how personalities and people work together. So I think that kind of personal interaction in an office that small is really the only way to go. If it was much larger, like if we were in Laramie County or even over the hill, you might have to take a more a bigger approach. But given the size of the office, really knowing them personally, and when necessary, of course, bringing in HR. There are, of course, employment laws that have to be followed. And if there's been an actual complaint, concerns need to be addressed, need to be documented. But as much as possible, just taking the personal approach.
Thanks, Kurt.
Thank you, sir.
Kurt, suppose you give legal advice to the county commission that a commissioner challenges. What would your process be to make sure the advice was accurate?
First and foremost, go back to my office and research that issue. Educating yourself before you answer off the cuff or take a hard position is not the right way to go about things. You need to go back. You need to reassess your legal advice and listen to what's being told to you, where the disagreement lies, and try to figure out maybe your decision was wrong. We're lucky enough to have some civil attorneys in the office and other attorneys with civil experience. Talk to them as well. They're an asset to be used. Try to find, if we have prior memorandums that have been provided to the commissioners or prior opinion letters from the Attorney General's office, search them all down and see whether or not the opinion or advice you're getting is correct. I think that is the way to handle things. And, if you still come up with the same decision and there's still a disagreement, handle it the best you can. I mean, the county attorney's role is only to give legal advice. I mean, the commissioners and the local government are our clients civilly, and we need to give them the best legal advice we can. Sometimes your client does not agree with your advice, and you have to accept that. And in the end, if the county commissioners decide to not take your advice, that is their decision. We do not bind them. But I think keeping an open mind, keeping the willingness to educate yourself and go back and relook at things and admit if you were wrong and move on from there.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you, sir.
Kurt, just allow me to get this down. I'm a slow writer.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my second question is, because your experience is primarily in criminal law or non-governmental civil matters, please describe how you intend to gain the knowledge necessary to oversee the majority of the county's attorney's workload, such as drafting complex contracts, intergovernmental agreements, and resolutions.
And I do have some experience in contracts and things of those nature. I mean, contracts I feel more comfortable with, and of course, the governmental aspect of it. That is a rather niche market in legal work. I think there's relatively few attorneys that are up to speed on that sort of governmental administration. As far as educating myself, talking to the civil attorney in our office and being open to having discussions and looking at prior contracts, prior agreements, looking, of course, at the law itself and determining, what is and what is not appropriate, and gaining whatever knowledge I can in that manner. Also, continuing legal education, looking up to where there are books and courses that you can take which don't require you to travel or incur a lot of expenses. They can bring you up to speed on local government law and get you to where you need to be. I think that would be one thing that I would have to do pretty much right off the bat to get myself up to where I need to be on local government. And using the resources that are in the county government itself. I know the people to go ask questions to that have experience in this area, and be willing to go up and talk to the people who know how things work. And every government is different, and every jurisdiction is different on how they approach things. And I think learning from the people who have seen things work and have done this in the past, I mean, that's just irreplaceable as far as education goes in local government administration of the civil issues that would come up. There are also, of course, and when it comes to civil law, there are many things to look at and many areas to educate yourself on. And basic civil law, I do have an understanding of the rules of civil procedure and basic litigation areas. I have done those sorts of cases, and I do know what's going on. But when it comes to the governmental administration and contracts, looking at what's been done in the past, talking to people that have had personal experience in those areas, your grant writers, your clerks, and things of that nature, I think is really the best way to approach it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The county attorney's job is high stakes in about all cases. Knowing what not to do is as important as knowing what to do. How does your professional experience help you avoid costly unintended mistakes?
My experience, particularly with prosecution, really when you're handling a large caseload, is all about prioritization and putting what is the most urgent and the most important ahead of the line, and making sure that what needs to be handled is handled first off. And I think that gives you the balance you need when you're looking at issues that are coming at you fairly quickly, and where you need to put your focus at that time. And sometimes less is more. Staying within the realm you're comfortable on and saying that if you need more time to look at something, I need more time to look at it. I need to go back and really make sure that things are being done properly, and that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's, so we don't rush through things and cause much more of a problem in the future that could have been taken care of by just taking a little bit more time on the front end and addressing things as they come to the door, instead of when the door is smashed back down because something bad has happened. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Kurt, what is something new that you've learned in the past year, and how have you applied that learning to your work as an attorney?
In the past year, I think has given everybody a different perspective on life in a way. I mean, it has been a wild year, and really, I think made people look at what's important in their life and the balance that needs to be made there. And spending time, with my wife and our four-legged family, and really having that home time, which wasn't always the case. I mean, I think particularly in the legal world, you are programmed in a way to work nonstop, no matter what the sacrifice, and to get ahead. And I think there's been a fundamental adjustment overall in that kind of work-life balance. You know, and I've seen it in myself, you know, setting boundaries, you know, when it's family time and it's, you know, it's important. You don't take the phone call that maybe I would have taken a year and a half ago. And starting to put those personal relationships, you know, more to the forefront, you know, not sacrificing work, not slacking, but just understanding that, you know, there are times when you need to shut things off and you need to spend time with the people that you care about, and really, you know, enjoy life. You only get one go at it, and trying to make it the best on both the work end as a life end as you can.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you, sir.
Last question coming from me, Kurt. What would you do if you were asked to work on a case, contract, or business scenario that triggered ethical concerns for you? And has this ever happened to you? And if so, what did you do?
Anything that's an ethical consideration is always going to be paramount for an attorney. With ethical concerns always come first. If there's something you think is criminal or something that is not appropriate for you to be working on, you need to talk to the individual who presented you with that project and express your concerns if it's appropriate. There may be times where that's not the route to take. If you think there's been some kind of criminal misconduct on that individual's part, then you know you need to move on to maybe the sheriff's office or some sort of investigative agency. At that point, that's probably on the far end of extremes. Most things won't reach that level, but if possible, you know, talk to the person about the ethical issue and try to tell them why you know you're just not comfortable with it, and you know possible liability they could be causing for the county, who is your client, and that there needs to be, you know, another look taken at whatever's going on. Personally, to prosecute a case ethically as a prosecutor, you need to at least have a probable cause belief that the individual committed the crime. That is the standard. If you don't believe there's probable cause to believe that person committed that crime, you should not be going forward with the prosecution at all. I've had cases that initially that was the case. It seemed from first glance that the case was solid and there was more than enough to move on. But as things progressed, the evidence took a different turn, whether that be DNA or chemical testing, or witnesses that came about later in the investigation. And the right thing to do there is you dismiss the case. If you do not think that individual committed the crime, or you know there's not at least evidence to show at least probable cause that they did, that you need to get rid of the case. And you know I've had to do that on occasion.
So you've had some experience. Has this ever happened to you where you had ethical concerns?
Yes, ma'am, in the criminal realm. I had ethical concerns that basically, I don't know if the person did it, or the evidence now that we've gotten later in the investigation shows they didn't do it. And what you do is get rid of the case, basically. That is the proper result. If it cannot be fixed and you don't believe the person committed that crime, then you get rid of that case.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, those are all the questions from the commissioners. You now have, Kurt, have 10 minutes if you'd like to give us a summation or closing remarks, or if you have any questions that you would like to make of us.
Thank you very much. I don't really have any questions. I've worked in the county attorney's office for almost 10 years, and I think the one advantage that I really have is experience. I know the people. I know the personalities in Albany County government, and on the criminal side, I know the defense bar. I've worked well with them. I know law enforcement. I believe I have a good relationship with law enforcement. I believe I have a good relationship with the courts in this jurisdiction. The criminal prosecution, I know very well in this jurisdiction and how things work and how things go. And I think that I have the skill and the judgment to see things through as they should be, and to administer justice as it should be administered. And justice, the role of a prosecutor is administer justice. And I say that a lot. And the reason I say this is because it's important. It's not just to win cases. It's the one role where the attorney is not just there to win the case and have the person convicted, regardless of any consideration. Prosecutors really are there to analyze a case, to determine the viability of evidence, and determine the proper outcome that is in the best interest of society itself. And I believe I have the experience to do that and to provide that service for Albany County. On the civil realm, I do have experience in civil law, not so much with the government administration part of it and the contracts, things of that nature, but I have the capability of learning it. And when any attorney takes on a new area of the law, as all attorneys will at some point in their career, or you would never would do anything, it is up to the attorney to educate themselves, to bring themselves up to speed, to consult with other counsel if need be, and to make sure that they know what they're talking about. And they know that area of law, and I do feel that I'm absolutely capable of bringing myself up to speed on local government law and the administration of the county, and to give the best advice possible to our boards, to our various elected positions, and to the county commissioners. I care a lot about Albany County. I care a lot about that office in particular, and I was there for quite some time. We have great people working there. I've heard no complaints, and I would hope that they would all stay on if I were to be appointed, and that I could assist them the best I could in getting the office, to where it needs to be, and supporting them the best I can. But it would be my honor to serve Albany County and maintain that office, to be the next county attorney.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Kurt. Once we have finished the interviews here, you are welcome to go if you'd like. We're going to be breaking into executive session. We'll have a discussion. I'll obviously come out with the person that we will be appointing. You will either hear from Jackie or, as I said, you may stick around if you so choose. And we definitely will have somebody selected this afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Mr. Hill.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hill.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
I have not met you. I'm Sue Ibera, U.S. County Commissioner.
Yeah.
We will be asking you 9 questions. Each of us, as I explained before, submitted 3 questions. We'll go round robin. You have about 45 minutes to answer, so we're not timing in any way, but that way you can sort of plan on your answers and the length of them and all. At the end of that time, you will be allowed about 10 minutes for closing remarks or any questions that you might want to address to us.
Okay. Thank you.
So Commissioner Richardson will start with the first question.
County attorney works closely with outside boards, elected officials, department heads, and staff in the office. If you were appointed to be the county attorney, how do you develop, grow, and repair these working relationships?
Well, first off, I can't say where the relationships are broken. I can say that a lot of the folks that work in the county attorney's office right now, I know them. I've worked with them because I've got a public defender so long. But I think that we actually have a pretty good relationship. And we were also in the planning commission, so I know them folks over there too, and we have a pretty good working relationship too. Well, still not so much of a really working relationship, but they would pass stuff, pass ideas or issues and stuff that they had off on me and to get my legal opinion, as well as the other attorneys that were in the office. So I think that I'm pretty easygoing, and people can come to me. I'm not a very uptight or anything like that. So I think that gives me some room to grow relationships. So I think that I can do it. I don't know exactly what all the issues are. I know that there was complaints certainly coming from the board that was in the office where I was. And so I talked about some of that stuff with him, and I think that we could get along.
Thank you. Commissioner Gosar will have the second question.
Good afternoon, Mr. Hiller. I have not met you as well, Pete Gosar, and it's nice to meet you today. Would you please explain how you would ensure that your office will encourage and support diverse voices and opinions? And can you give an example from your past experience?
Well, in the office that I ran, we always had the most diverse clientele. We people from around the world, we represented, and I think that I taught them to, as supervisor, that they had to provide respect and stuff for everybody that came into our office. That included the legal assistants as well as the attorneys, and provided an example of myself to make sure that they conformed and it was diverse. I can't say that with our office, the hiring and stuff there at the public defender's office, was quite as diverse as our clientele, but I have no issues with that, and I believe that we could successfully run this office here in Albany County, the Albany County Attorney's Office, with the ability to appreciate the diversiveness of this community. And I think this is one of the most diverse communities that I can say that I've been in. I've practiced in a lot of the counties around the state and stuff. And I think, especially with the University of Wyoming, this is a fairly diverse community. And I think that I don't know if other than our handling of our clients, I don't know how else to really answer that question.
Thank you, Randy. Appreciate it.
Mr. Hiller, for how long did you or have you prosecuted felony cases, and how many of those cases went to jury trial?
I've never prosecuted, I've defended them. I've probably tried hundreds of felony cases. I started in '98 with the Public Defender's Office in Rollins. And at that time, when I started there, that Judge Stebner told us that, or told me that after we've had a few trials over there, that they hadn't had trials for 5 years before I came in there. And then I was trying a case there probably every 3 months. And those were the felony ones. Misdemeanor cases, I've probably defended 50, 75 of those, but most of the misdemeanor cases, we always worked out some sort of plea deal on it.
Thank you.
Let's see, where did I put my, that's funny. What is your philosophy for managing staff, interns, and attorneys?
I'm pretty laid back. I give, when I was a supervisor at Public Defense, I gave the attorneys free rein, pretty much, their discretion to do what they needed to do. I was always available there for them to come to if they had questions or concerns or had issues that they needed to address. I always made sure though that the work was being done. So while I'm not a really hands-on guy, I'm not a micromanager. I would constantly make sure that we were getting our work done and getting cases processed through, and that my attorneys and my staff were not goofing off and screwing up, I guess. So my philosophy of being laid back, and these people are professionals. They know what they're doing. You give them some leeway to do their stuff, their job.
Thank you.
Suppose you give legal advice to the county commission that a commissioner challenges. What would your process be to make sure the advice was accurate?
I suspect if they asked me the question, I wasn't sure what the answer was, I would study the law regarding that question before I gave the answer, so that I'd hope that I gave them the right answer. If it turned out that the commissioners still were unsatisfied with that answer that I gave them, I would probably have to say, well, that's what I understand the law to be. And but you have to make your decision because you're the ones who are in charge.
Thank you, Randy.
Because your experience is primarily in criminal law or non-governmental civil matters, please describe how you intend to gain the knowledge necessary to oversee the majority of the county attorney's workload, such as drafting complex contracts, intergovernmental agreements, and resolutions.
Well, I would probably rely a lot on the civil attorney that is currently in the position. But the law is always a learning process, and you're always researching things out. And I believe that in the overall, if issues came up, that's where I go, is I learn the law about it, and I go from there. I do, I've processed written contracts because I did have a private practice. Matter of fact, I wrote a contract just recently since I've been retired. And so, I still kind of generally know the process for getting a contract done. But certainly there's going to be complex issues and stuff that could come up with a contract, especially when you're dealing with a county agency that I would have to take and get caught up by virtue of studying the law and stuff about that. And that's what attorneys do. That I think that's why they say that we're always practicing law, is because we never know everything.
Thank you.
The county attorney's job is high stakes. Knowing what not to do is as important as knowing what to do. How does your professional experience help you avoid costly, unintended mistakes?
Well, I think that certainly with regard to criminal matters and stuff, I can look at the case from a criminal defense attorney's point of view and analyze the case to decide whether or not that's an appropriate case to proceed with. And I think basically is one of the other things that I think that you really need to do is really step back and ethically think about what you're doing at a particular point in time, so that it causes, or if there's certain issues that may come up that may cause the county pain and stuff like that, you're avoiding it. And it's thinking that out and not in I'm thinking that you want to make sure that it's an independent, your own independent action, not following some for example, law enforcement, if law enforcement wants something done, to do it as a practical matter of what is ethical and B, what is right for this, for the particular county at the time.
Randy, what is something new that you've learned in the past year, and how have you applied the learning to your work as an attorney?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
So what is, Randy, so what is something new that you've learned in the past year, and how have you applied that learning to your work as an attorney?
You know, I guess over the past year and stuff, I've learned a lot about transgender folks, and you know, and I see, I guess, the prejudice and stuff that have been falling on those folks, and I think that you know, I represented some of those folks when I was a public defender, but I divorced myself from that. Their personal situation, I just focused on their case. But in my personal life, I've ran into this issue and stuff, and I see that it's a lot more in doing the law. If you practice the law, if you have a little bit better understanding of who these folks are and stuff, that I think that you can proceed a little better in either defending them or prosecuting them, so that they are. It's not like it's some sort of witch hunt, I guess.
Thank you, Randy.
Okay. My last question, you touched on this a little bit, Mr. Miller, when you answered Commissioner Richardson's question, but please explain how you, what would you do if you were asked to work on a case, contract, or business scenario that triggered ethical concerns for you? And has this ever happened to you? And if so, how did you deal with it?
I would personally withdraw myself from that case and give myself what they call the Chinese wall, to keep them, any other attorneys working on it, to use me as any kind of reference or anything like that. It's simply, you just can't. Ethics is our. If we're not ethical, we're not really attorneys. And yeah, through the public defender's office, there's been times and stuff where I've represented a particular client, and who then gets in trouble with another one of my clients. That becomes an ethical issue. And so I divorced myself from represent either one of these folks in the particular case. So, and then never talked to any of the other attorneys or let them talk to me about how they were going to handle those particular cases. I think it's pretty simple to determine whether you're going to have an ethical problem and stuff. And my philosophy is that if you have an ethical problem with it, you just divorce yourself from it, you stay away from it, and someone else who would be better suited for that handle those issues.
Thank you. That's all of the questions we had for you. You have now about 10 minutes to give us any closing remarks, or if you have any questions that you would like to give to us.
I don't really have any questions. The only thing that I would say is that I understand, I know Bain and Kurt, and they have quite a bit of experience as being prosecutors. I don't have experience other than, I guess in private practice when I would prosecute the plaintiff's attorney when I was in that situation. but I don't really have that much experience. But I do have a lot of experience in supervision and running an office. Because I've run virtually the public defender's office. I started in 1998, and I think it was within 3 years I was the supervisor in the Rollins office. When I went to when I transferred to Laramie, I was a supervisor. I was a supervisor for both Carbon and Albany at that particular time until Diane relieved me of the supervision portion of Carbon County, and then eventually made me supervisor for both counties again right before I retired. So I think that's my strong point, is that I do have this supervisory skills, and I think that I can say with confidence that the folks that worked under me appreciated the way that I ran that office and helped them out, my knowledge and stuff, because I've been practicing longer than most of the folks in the public defender's system, and they appreciated that, and I think that that's my strong point. And the county attorney's office or the county attorney position rather, I'm sorry, is a supervisory job. There's a lot of folks that work there, and a lot of folks that need the supervision, and I think that that's what I provide. I think I have a good ability to try cases and stuff. I've done that for years, and I think that I can handle that, and I certainly have at least decent research skills and stuff to help along with any issues and stuff that come along with the county attorney's office, everybody we represent. So I think that that's my strong suit, and that's what I'm hanging my hat on, I guess.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hiller. That's everything. We are going to be breaking into executive session, obviously discussing. You are welcome to go, or you are welcome to stay, whichever you prefer, but we will be making an appointment this afternoon.
Okay, thank you.
At this time, I need a motion to go into executive session.
Let's see. What statute am I citing as the reason to go into executive session? Gotcha. So that's 164405A.
Yeah, it's on your
Hey,
agenda. Here.
Oh, it is.
Caleb's got you covered.
I move that we enter into executive session pursuant to Wyoming statute 164405A2.
Second.
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that we adjourn into executive session. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We are at 3:35 going into executive session.
We can go in.
How would you guys like me to enter into executive? Do you want me to call somebody, or?
We can call you from that conference line phone. What number do you want us to call you at?
Yeah, 307-760-3219, my cell number.
Okay, perfect. We'll call you in just 1 second.
Super, thank you. Sue Heber, can you hear me? Just to make sure.
Ken?
Awesome.
Oh,
We were muted. I
okay.
move that we exit executive session and move back into regular session.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we exit executive session and move back into regular session. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We have returned to regular session at 4:07. Mr. Richardson, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve resolution 2021-018, a resolution temporarily appointing the Albany County prosecuting attorney until a successor is elected at the next general election and takes office, and the appointment being Kirk Britzius.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve resolution 2021-018 and appoint as the Albany County prosecuting attorney until the next election, Kirk Britzius. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes and we are adjourned.
Thank you all and see ya. See you next week.
Gentlemen, again, thank you for making yourself available this afternoon.
Randy, thanks.